She sits quietly at the defense table, dressed neatly, shoulders relaxed. There is no panic on her face, no visible fear. If anything, there is confidence. Kouri Richins looks like someone who believes this case will end in her favor. To the court, she presents herself as a grieving widow, a mother, an author who wrote a children's book to help kids cope with loss. According to her, the death of her husband was a tragic accident, a mistake, something no one could have predicted, but the state of Utah tells a very different story. This case is officially titled State of Utah versus Kouri Richins. Prosecutors have charged her with aggravated murder, the most serious charge under Utah law. Alongside that are 3 counts of distribution of a controlled substance and multiple financial and insurance-related crimes. These are not emotional charges. They are calculated ones. The accusation is simple and chilling. The state alleges that Kouri Richins secretly poisoned her husband, Eric Richins, inside their own home in Kamas, Utah, that the poison was mixed into a cocktail she prepared herself, and that she did it not out of rage, but for money. Eric Richins was worth more to Kouri dead than alive, according to prosecutors. Large life insurance policies, crushing debt, business pressure, a lifestyle that could not be maintained without drastic action. Here is my opinion, and I want to be very clear. Cases like this are not crimes of impulse. This does not look like a moment of anger or an accident gone wrong. The charges suggest planning, patience, and emotional distance. Those are the most dangerous kinds of crimes because they happen quietly, without witnesses, without screams. Kouri Richins has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her defense claims this was an accident, that substances were taken unknowingly, that there was no intent to kill. But aggravated murder requires intent, and prosecutors say they can prove it. As this case moves toward trial, one question hangs over the courtroom like a shadow. Did Eric Richins die by tragic accident? Or was his death carefully engineered by the person he trusted most? According to prosecutors, Eric Richins did not die suddenly or without warning. They say his death was the final step in a slow and deliberate plan, one that unfolded quietly inside his own home, carried out by the person he trusted more than anyone else. On the night Eric died, the house in Kamas, Utah, appeared calm. There was no argument reported, no emergency call made in advance. Prosecutors say Kouri Richins prepared a cocktail for her husband, a normal, intimate gesture between spouses. But they allege that this drink was not safe. It was poison. The substance, according to the state, was a powerful controlled drug, something Eric did not knowingly take, something prosecutors argue was added intentionally in a dose large enough to be fatal. Eric drank the cocktail. Within a short time, his body began to shut down. When help finally arrived, it was too late. Eric Richins was pronounced dead in his own bed. No signs of struggle, no chance to fight back. Prosecutors argue that this is exactly why poison was chosen. It leaves no noise, no witnesses, and often no immediate suspicion. Here is my opinion, and this matters. Poison cases are not about emotion. They are about control. The person who poisons is calm, patient, detached. They watch and wait while the body fails. That kind of act requires intention, not panic. Important clip. Court document highlighting aggravated murder, charge end. The state also alleges this was not the first attempt. They claim Kouri had previously tried to poison Eric, but failed. This detail is critical. If proven, it destroys the idea of an accident completely. It turns this into a pattern. Prosecutors say the motive was money, massive debt, insurance payouts, financial pressure building behind closed doors. After Eric's death, those pressures eased. And then, something deeply unsettling happened. Important clip. Covered children's grief book written by Kouri End. Just months later, Kouri Richins published a children's book about grief, written for her own sons. To prosecutors, this wasn't healing. It was staging, a way to control the narrative. According to the state, Eric Richins did not die by chance. He was removed, quietly, deliberately. The night Eric Richins died did not begin with chaos. There were no screams, no neighbors calling police. According to investigators, It was an ordinary evening inside a quiet Utah home. That normalcy is what makes his moment so disturbing. Prosecutors say Kouri Richins prepared a drink for her husband, a cocktail, something Eric had no reason to fear. There is no evidence he knew anything was wrong, no warning signs, no suspicion. He drank it. What happened next was not immediate. That's important. Poisoning rarely is. Eric did not collapse instantly. Instead, prosecutors believe the drug entered his system quietly, beginning its work as he went about his night. Eric eventually went to bed. At some point, his breathing changed. His body weakened. And this is where the illusion breaks, because accidents do not hide in drinks. They do not wait in silence. They do not require patience. According to prosecutors, this moment was not sudden. It was chosen. From the very beginning, Kouri Richins' defense has centered on one word: accident. They argue that Eric Richins' death was never planned, never intended, and never meant to happen. According to the defense, this case is built on assumptions, not proof. The defense claims that Eric may have unknowingly consumed substances earlier that evening. Alcohol, they argue, can interact dangerously with medications or controlled drugs. In their version of events, the cocktail was harmless, and whatever killed Eric was already in his system. They also emphasize intent. Aggravated murder requires it. The defense insists there is no direct evidence showing Kouri intended to kill her husband. No confession, no eyewitness, no video. They argue the state is trying to fill gaps with speculation. Another key part of the defense strategy is image. Kouri is presented as a grieving widow, a mother of 3 boys who lost their father. They point to her behavior after Eric's death, organizing the funeral, caring for the children, and later writing a book about grief, as proof of love, not guilt. Here is my opinion, and it's important to say this carefully. Defense teams are meant to create doubt. That is their job. But doubt only works when it fits the facts. Sympathy does not erase behavior, and grief, while real, does not automatically mean innocence. The defense has also challenged the prosecution's experts. They argue that toxicology alone cannot show who administered the substance, when it was given, or why. They question timelines. They question assumptions. They question motive. But here is where the accident theory begins to strain. Accidents are random. They leave confusion. What prosecutors highlight, and what the defense must overcome, is pattern. Financial stress. Prior attempts. Opportunity. Silence, when help could have been called. In my view, accidents do not line up this cleanly. They do not arrive with benefits attached, and they do not usually come with explanations that change over time. The defense asks the jury to believe that Eric Richins' death was tragic, unintended, and unforeseeable. The prosecution asks a harder question. If this was an accident, why does it look so carefully contained? Prosecutors say accidents leave chaos. This case, they argue, leaves a trail. A clear sequence of actions that begins long before the night Eric Richins died and continues long after. Investigators uncovered digital evidence that raised immediate alarms. According to court filings, Kouri Richins searched for information related to powerful drugs and lethal dosages. These searches were not random. They were specific, and they happened before Eric's death. The timing matters. Prosecutors argue these searches show preparation, not curiosity. In my opinion, this is one of the strongest parts of a case. People do not research lethal substances casually, especially when those substances later appear in a loved one's body. The state also points to evidence that Kouri obtained controlled substances that were not prescribed to Eric. This undercuts the defense's claim that Eric accidentally consumed something on his own. Prosecutors say access equals opportunity, and in this home, that access was not shared. Then there is the money. Prosecutors presented records showing significant financial strain before Eric's death. Debt, loans, pressure. After his death, life insurance payouts and financial relief followed. The state argues this was not coincidence. It was motive. Here is my opinion. Motive does not prove guilt by itself, but motive explains behavior. And when motive, opportunity, and action align, Accidents become harder to believe. Witnesses also described Kouri's behavior after Eric died as unusual, calm, controlled. Some said she appeared more focused on logistics and finances than grief. Prosecutors argue this emotional distance supports intent. Experts testified that poisoning cases often look exactly like this: no struggle, delayed symptoms, and a controlled environment. These are not crimes of passion. They are crimes of patience. When you step back and look at the full picture, the searches, the substances, the money, the silence, the accident theory begins to collapse. In my view, the prosecution's case is not built on one piece of evidence. It's built on convergence. And convergence is what turns suspicion into certainty. As the courtroom settles, the mood shifts. This is no longer about theories or headlines. This is about law, about thresholds, about whether the evidence is strong enough to move forward. After reviewing the filings, testimony, and arguments, the court ruled that prosecutors had met the standard required to proceed. Kouri Richins was formally indicted on aggravated murder, along with 3 counts of distribution of a controlled substance and financial-related charges tied to insurance and debt. This decision did not determine guilt, but it did confirm something critical. The case was not weak. It was substantial enough to survive judicial scrutiny. The judge denied bail. That choice matters. Courts do not deny bail lightly. Prosecutors argued that the seriousness of the charge, combined with evidence of planning and access to controlled substances, made release unsafe. The court agreed. Here is my opinion. Bail decisions often speak quietly but clearly. When a judge keeps someone in custody, it suggests concern not just about flight, but about risk. It signals that the allegations are being taken seriously at the highest level. As of now, what happens next will come down to evidence, not emotion, not sympathy, not image. Jurors will be asked to decide whether Eric Richins' death was a